The slip of paper felt flimsy in my hand. Just another piece of junk mail I almost tossed. But something, a nagging feeling, made me pull out my phone and check the numbers. Then again. And again. My breath hitched. It wasn't real. It couldn't be. The numbers on the screen swam, blurring into a single, impossible truth. One. The lottery. Millions. A silent scream built in my chest, a raw, wild thing that I had to swallow down. I was sitting at my beat-up kitchen table in Oak Creek, the same one where Dad had lectured me about responsibility for the millionth time last week. Mom was probably upstairs, meticulously planning her next social media post, and David was likely still asleep, dreaming of ways to spend money he didn't have. They were my family, the ones who'd always talked about money, always needed more, always made me feel like I owed them something. Now I had something. Something huge. A wave of something cold washed over me. Colder than the disbelief. It was the sudden, sharp realization of what this meant. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about them. Their eyes, their demands, their insatiable hunger. The weight of their expectations, which I'd always carried, suddenly felt 10 times heavier, crushing. They'd never imagined this. They'd never imagined having this. A small, dark smile touched my lips. They had no idea what was coming. This quiet victory was just the beginning. The winning lottery ticket. Eleanor's smartphone. The first thing I did, after the initial shock wore off and the cold dread settled in, was to put the ticket in a safe place. Not my wallet, not my bedside drawer. I found an old, dusty shoebox in the back of my closet, shoved it beneath a pile of forgotten sweaters, and tucked the ticket inside. It felt ridiculous, like something out of a bad movie, but I wasn't ready for anyone to know. Not yet. My head was still spinning, trying to process the sheer, impossible magnitude of it all. Millions. It was enough to change everything, and that's exactly what scared me. The next morning I woke up with a plan. It wasn't a grand, detailed blueprint, but a gut feeling, a simmering need to see how they'd react. I needed to test the waters, to see the first ripples of greed spread across their faces before I even said a word. I decided to start small, to plant a seed. I found my mom, Carol, in the kitchen, already scrolling through her phone, a faint frown creasing her brow. She was probably curating her online persona, making sure her virtual life looked as perfect as she desperately wanted her real one to be. "Hey, Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice casual, even though my heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. She glanced up, her eyes flicking over me with that familiar, almost dismissive air. "Eleanor, you're up early." "Yeah, well, I was thinking," I started, walking over to the coffee pot. I poured myself a mug, the familiar ritual grounding me. "You know how things have been a little tight lately." Her frown deepened. "Tight? Eleanor, we're barely making ends meet. Your father is worried sick about the business. We might have to sell the house." She said it with a dramatic sigh, her gaze already drifting back to her phone. My gut clenched. She always played the victim, always painted a picture of impending doom to manipulate. "Right, well," I continued, my voice a little firmer now. "I was thinking maybe I could help out a bit. With a little extra cash I came into." Her head snapped up this time. Her eyes, usually a washed-out blue, suddenly sharpened, focusing on me with an intensity one hadn't seen in years. "Extra cash? What are you talking about, Eleanor? Did you get that promotion?" I shook my head, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on my lips. "No, nothing like that. It's a bit more complicated. Let's just say I had a stroke of incredible luck." I let the ambiguity hang in the air, watching her closely. Her gaze narrowed, a flicker of suspicion mixed with a dawning, avaricious hope. "Luck? What kind of luck, Eleanor? Don't play games with me." "I'm not," I assured her, taking a slow sip of my coffee. "Just know that things might be looking up for us. For all of us." She didn't respond immediately, her mind clearly racing. I could see the wheels turning, calculating, dissecting my words. The way she looked at me had already changed. It wasn't the usual maternal concern. It was something else, something hungry. Later that day, I found David sprawled on the couch, controller in hand, the TV blaring some mindless action movie. He barely grunted when I entered the room. "David," I said, my voice deliberately louder than usual to cut through the noise. He mumbled something unintelligible, his eyes glued to the screen. "David, I have some news." This time he paused the game, a flicker of interest in his eyes. He was always looking for an easy payday. "What is it? Did you finally get that raise you've been whining about?" "No," I said, leaning against the doorframe. "Something much bigger. Something that could change everything." I let my gaze drift around the room, taking in the mess, the general air of neglect. "Let's just say our financial worries might be over." His eyebrows shot up. He sat up straighter, his lazy posture instantly replaced by a coiled alertness. Sarah was there, talking about her latest art project. I was half listening, my mind on the coded message I'd overheard Dad on the phone about a few days prior. Something about a package and a confirmation code. It sounded suspicious, like something out of a spy movie, but I had a gut feeling it was connected to Bellwether. I pretended to check my notifications, then casually steered the conversation. "Hey, Sarah, you know how my dad's always talking about his investments with that guy, Marcus Bellwether?" Sarah nodded, stirring her latte. "Yeah, he seems intense." "Well," I said, lowering my voice, "I think I might have stumbled onto something. I saw my dad with a little notebook, like a private ledger, from Bellwether's company. And he was talking on the phone about some coded message." Felt of. Sarah's brow furrowed. "Coded message? Like secret codes?" "Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to figure out what it means. It's like they're communicating in a secret language, and I have a feeling it has to do with, well, with everything." I didn't want to say my lottery money out loud yet, not even to Sarah. Still felt too surreal. As Sarah started to offer her thoughts, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. My stomach dropped. It was a string of seemingly random numbers and letters. A chill ran down my spine. This was it. Coded message. I quickly took a picture of it, my hand shaking slightly. "What is it?" Sarah asked, noticing my sudden tension. "Nothing," I lied, forcing a smile. "Just spam. Anyway, about your art." But I wasn't listening anymore. I had the numbers. And I had a hunch. My dad and Bellwether weren't just talking about investments. They were actively planning something, and that something involved me. This wasn't just family drama anymore. This was a conspiracy, and I was right in the middle of it. The visceral dread I'd felt earlier was now mixed with a cold, hard determination. They thought they were playing a game, but they had no idea I was already 3 steps ahead. The real unveiling was about to begin. The next few days were a blur, but not of celebration. Instead, I was in full-on detective mode, my smartphone my new best friend. The win was real, the money was sitting there, untouched, but the real prize was proving what I suspected, that my family wasn't just greedy, they were calculated. They were already circling, ready to feast. I had to build my case, brick by digital brick. I started with the casual conversations, the ones that felt so normal on the surface but dripped with manipulation underneath. Mom's constant woe is me routine, how tight things were, how she was worried about losing the house. I'd started recording our calls, discreetly, while pretending to be on speakerphone, or just leaving my phone out on the counter during our kitchen chats. Felt sneaky, dirty even, but necessary. Every time she'd sigh dramatically about bills or Dad's struggling business, I'd capture it. Her voice, usually so saccharine, took on a desperate edge when she talked about money. It was chilling to hear, knowing it was all a performance, a bid for sympathy that would soon turn into a demand. Then there was David. Oh, David. His entitlement was a force of nature. After my little hints, he'd started dropping by more, always with some flimsy excuse. He'd need a ride, or just wanted to hang out, but his eyes were always scanning, looking for an opening. I'd catch him watching me, a calculating look that sent a shiver down my spine. I started recording our conversations too, especially when he'd casually bring up my good fortune. So heard you came into some cash. Anything good? Like enough to, help a brother out? Maybe that new gaming rig I've been eyeing, he'd say. His voice laced with that fake casualness. He was so predictable. He'd already spent my money in his head 100 times over. The most damning evidence, though, came from the interactions with Dad. Robert. He was smoother, more subtle, but his greed was just as potent. He'd call me, all concerned fatherly talk, asking how I was doing, if I was managing okay. But then it would shift. Eleanor, with your new situation, it's important to have good advisors. Marcus Bellwether, he's the best. He's handled my affairs for years. You should really let him take a look at your portfolio. He'd always steer the conversation back to Bellwether, to his supposed expertise. I started recording those calls too. The way he'd subtly pressure me, the way his voice would change when he thought he was getting close to my money. It was all there, a digital paper trail of his intentions. I was building a library of their voices, their words, their thinly veiled threats and manipulative tactics. Each recording, each saved text message, was another piece of the puzzle. I'd saved the photos of that Bellwether Holdings notebook too. It was all going into a secure folder on my phone, password protected, of course. It felt like I was living a double life, playing the oblivious daughter while secretly gathering ammunition. The sheer audacity of their greed, their willingness to exploit me, fueled a cold, hard resolve within me. They thought they knew me, thought I was just their little Eleanor, easy to control. They had no idea what I was becoming or what I was planning. This digital trail wasn't just about evidence. It was about reclaiming my power. The air in the daily grind felt blessedly normal, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. The usual scent of roasted coffee beans and baked goods was a comforting anchor. I watched Sarah across the small, worn table, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug, her expression open and trusting. It was exactly what I needed, but also the hardest part. Confiding in her meant acknowledging the ugly truth, the darkness that had seeped into my family. And if I was honest, a little bit of it was starting to seep into me too. So, I started, my voice a little shaky. I've been doing some digging. About Dad and Bellwether and, well, everything. I pushed my own barely touched coffee cup around in a small circle. It's worse than I thought, Sarah. Way worse. Sarah leaned forward, her brow furrowed with concern. Worse how, Elle? You've been acting different since you won. Like you're carrying something heavy. I took a deep breath, the words tumbling out, a messy confession of suspicions confirmed. It's not just about them wanting the money. It's like they were already planning this. Before I even knew I'd won. Dad and Bellwether, they've been in on something together for years, I think. And my lottery win. It's just another payday for them. Another way to get their hands on something they think they deserve. I recounted the coded message, the secret of phone calls, the way my dad subtly steered every conversation towards Marcus Bellwether. I even mentioned the Bellwether Holdings notebook, the gold embossing on the leather. It felt like I was reading something I shouldn't have, I admitted, my voice dropping. Like I'd stumbled into their secret world. Sarah listened intently, her initial worry deepening into something more serious. That sounds really messed up, Elle. Like seriously shady. What are you going to do? That was the million-dollar question, wasn't it? I don't know, I confessed, the uncertainty a heavy weight. I feel like I'm drowning in all this. Mom's playing the victim. David's acting like he's already spent my winnings, and Dad's just pulling the strings like always. They're all so damn greedy. I looked down at my hands, noticing how they were clenched tight. And the worst part is, I'm starting to feel it too. This anger. This need to make them pay. It's not just about getting my money back anymore. It's about showing everyone what they really are. A quiet resolve began to settle over me, a cold certainty that cut through the fear. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was gathering evidence, building a case. I've been recording everything, I told Sarah, a grim satisfaction in my voice. Their calls, their conversations. Little snippets of their greed. Feels wrong almost, but I have to. I need proof. Solid proof. Sarah reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. Her touch was warm, grounding. Elle, whatever you decide to do, you're not alone. I'm here for you. Just be careful, okay? This sounds dangerous. I squeezed her hand, a genuine smile finally touching my lips. I know. Thanks, Sarah. Really. I still didn't tell her the full extent of my plan, the intricate web I was weaving. But her support, her belief in me was a crucial piece. It was a reminder that not everyone in my life was tainted by this rot. And it solidified my own quiet determination. They thought they were playing a game, but they had no idea I was already 3 steps ahead. The real unveiling was about to begin. The air in the daily grind had been thick with Sarah's concern, and mine with a desperate need to do. Talking it out was good, but it wasn't enough. I needed a plan, a real one, not just a gut feeling. After our coffee, I drove straight to the Oak Creek Public Library. It felt like stepping back in time, a quiet sanctuary from the digital noise and the suffocating weight of my family's expectations. The hushed atmosphere, the smell of old paper, it was exactly what I needed to ground myself. I spent the next few days there, practically living in the stacks. My smartphone was still my go-to for recording, but this was different. This was about knowledge, about understanding the game they were playing so I could flip the board. I devoured books on financial fraud, white-collar crime, and most importantly, legal loopholes. I learned about shell corporations, money laundering, and how people like Marcus Bellwether could hide dirty money in plain sight. It was a whole other world, hidden behind fancy suits and official-sounding jargon. I discovered terms like predicate offenses and constructive fraud. It sounded complicated, but the core idea was simple. They were stealing, just in a way that required a law degree to prove. I found articles detailing cases where advisors had manipulated clients, using their trust to siphon off assets. It was chillingly familiar. The way my dad kept pushing Bellwether, the way Bellwether's name was on that notebook I'd seen. It all clicked. They weren't just looking to skim off the top. They were planning a full-on takeover of my winnings, dressed up as financial planning. I learned about statutes of limitations, about how to properly document evidence, and the importance of chain of custody. It felt like I was studying for the most important exam of my life because, in a way, I needed to know what was admissible, what would hold up in court if it came to that. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was strategic. I started making detailed notes, not just on their words, but on the financial crimes they were likely committing. I was building a mental map of their operation, identifying the weak points. One afternoon, tucked away in a quiet corral, I stumbled upon a section about elder financial abuse and exploitation of vulnerable adults. Hit me hard. While I wasn't exactly a vulnerable adult, the tactics they were using, the pressure, the manipulation, the isolation were eerily similar. Solidified my resolve. This wasn't just about my money. It was about them preying on people, and I was their next target. The library, with its quiet hum of knowledge, was becoming my war room. I was arming myself with facts, turning their greed into my weapon. The digital trail was one thing, but understanding the legal landscape was the real foundation for what I was about to do. The library had been my sanctuary, a place where I could finally breathe and think. But the knowledge I'd gained there, the cold, hard facts about how guys like Marcus Bellwether operated, they didn't bring comfort. They brought a chilling clarity. They made me realize I had to get closer, to see the snake in its own den. Setting up the meeting with Bellwether felt like playing a dangerous game of chess. I called his office, my voice carefully modulated to sound just a little bit overwhelmed, a little bit naive. I told his assistant I was a new client, someone who'd recently come into a significant amount of money and needed serious guidance. I dropped hints about my father, Robert, mentioning how he'd spoken so highly of Bellwether Financial Services. It was a calculated move, using my dad's name as a key to unlock the door. Mr. Bellwether can see you next Tuesday at 10 a.m., the receptionist chirped, her voice as polished as the chrome on his office door. Tuesday morning arrived with a sky the color of bruised plums. The Bellwether Financial Services office was exactly as I'd imagined. All glass, steel, and hushed tones. It screamed money, but the kind that felt slippery. I smoothed down my simple dark dress, the one Sarah had helped me pick out, and took a deep breath. This was it. The trap was being set. Marcus Bellwether himself was smooth, too. He greeted me with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, a practiced charm that felt as fake as a $3 bill. He ushered me into his office, a space that was all dark wood and expensive art, designed to impress and intimidate. "Eleanor, so good to finally meet you," he said, gesturing for me to sit. "Your father, Robert, he's a valued client. He mentioned you'd had a bit of good fortune." "A bit," I echoed, my voice light. I let him lead the conversation, my ears tuned to every word, every subtle shift in his tone. He talked about diversification, about managing risk, about ensuring my newfound wealth was protected. It was all standard financial advisor talk, but I was listening for the undertones, the places where he might slip up. "It's a lot to handle all at once," I admitted, playing the part. "My dad's been giving me some advice, but, well, he's my dad. I wanted a professional opinion. Someone who's seen it all." I let my gaze drift to a framed photo on his desk. Him shaking hands with some important-looking guy. "He mentioned you handled some sensitive accounts for him. Investments that were, off the books." Bellwether's smile tightened, just for a second. "Robert has a very diversified portfolio, Eleanor. We work to maximize returns within legal frameworks." The words hung in the air. I leaned forward, my eyes locking with his. "Right. Because my dad also said something about making sure certain assets were untraceable if anything went wrong." He made it sound like it was just smart planning, but it sounded a little shady if I'm being honest. I watched his face, searching for a flicker of guilt, a hint of the man I knew was hiding beneath the expensive suit. He met my gaze, his own unblinking. The air in the room grew heavy, thick with unspoken truths. He was a pro, all right, but I was planting seeds, tiny doubts that I hoped would grow into something bigger. This was just the beginning. The meeting with Marcus Bellwether left a bitter taste in my mouth. He was slick, sure, but I'd seen the flicker in his eyes. Now, it was time to see how my family would react when things didn't go their way, when the easy money started to feel a little less easy. I decided to start small, right at the Vance family home. The next Sunday, I showed up with a smile, a casserole, and a story about a minor hiccup. "So sorry, guys," I announced, setting the dish on the table at the Vance family home. "My car's making this weird noise like a dying badger. I think I need to take it in for a checkup. Might be without it for a day or two." Robert barely looked up from his paper. "A dying badger? Eleanor, don't be dramatic. Just get it fixed. We have plans this week." His tone was dismissive, like I was a child complaining about a scraped knee. Carol, on the other hand, gave me a sharp look. "Without your car, how are you going to get around? We can't be expected to ferry you everywhere, you know." That was the first jab. I just nodded, playing the innocent victim. "I know, Mom. I'll figure something out." Later that week, I called David. "Hey, Dave, you know that vintage jacket I love? The leather one. I think I left it at your place last time I was over. Could you grab it for me? I've been looking for it." David, who was always looking for a handout, jumped on it. "Yeah, sure, no problem. But, you gonna, pay me back for the trouble? Gas ain't cheap, you know." "Of course, Dave," I said, my voice dripping with false sweetness. "I'll Venmo you as soon as I get it." He grumbled something about it taking him a while to find it, and that he'd need to check his schedule to bring it over. The desperation was already setting in. He wanted that jacket, and he knew I'd pay him, but he was trying to milk it for every last drop. Then came Carol. She'd been hinting about needing a new designer handbag, something ridiculously expensive. I'd accidentally deleted her online shopping cart, the one filled with a purse that cost more than my old car. "Oh, Mom, I'm so sorry. My computer was acting up, and I must have hit the wrong button. It's gone." Her reaction was immediate and explosive. "Eleanor, are you kidding me? I spent hours picking that out. You're so careless with my things. You have no idea how much that cost." She was practically vibrating with fury, her carefully constructed composure cracking. These were small things, tiny pebbles tossed into their pond of entitlement. But I watched the ripples spread. Robert grew more impatient, his questions about my financial advisor becoming more frequent and pointed. David started calling daily, asking if I'd forgotten about him and the jacket. Carol was icing me out, her passive aggression a thick, suffocating blanket. They were used to getting what they wanted when they wanted it. And I was slowly, methodically, cutting off their supply. Their greed was making them sloppy, and their impatience was their undoing. The cracks were showing and I was just getting started. I needed to see it in her eyes, feel it in the air between us. I decided to go for a casual Sunday visit, just like old times. I showed up at the Vance family home with a smile, a half-hearted attempt at normalcy. Carol was in the kitchen, fussing over something that smelled vaguely of burnt sugar. She looked up, her eyes narrowing slightly, that familiar flicker of annoyance I'd grown to recognize. "Eleanor, what a surprise," she said, her voice tight. She wiped her hands on her apron, avoiding my gaze. "Just wanted to see how everyone was doing," I replied, leaning against the doorframe. "Thought I'd bring over some cookies." I held up a small box, the same kind she used to bake when I was a kid. It was a cheap shot, I knew, playing on her nostalgia, but I was playing a long game. She took the box, her fingers brushing mine. I felt a tiny jolt like static electricity. Her hand was cold. "That's nice of you, dear." She didn't open the box. She just set it on the counter, next to a pile of mail. We sat in the living room, Robert glued to the news as usual. Carol kept glancing at me, her eyes darting around the room like a trapped bird. I decided to push gently. "Mom," I started, my voice soft, conversational. "I was thinking about that trip you wanted to take to Napa. You know, the wine tasting thing." Her head snapped up. "Oh, that. Yes, well, with everything going on." She trailed off, her gaze fixed on a spot on the rug. "It's just," I continued, picking at a loose thread on the sofa cushion, "I heard Marcus Bellwether mentioning some really good investment opportunities. Apparently, he's got a lot of his clients set up for some major gains right now. It made me think of you and how much you deserve a little break." The color drained from Carol's face. Her hands, which had been clasped tightly in her lap, clenched even harder. Her knuckles turned white. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. I could practically hear her thoughts racing, trying to figure out what I knew, how I knew it. "Marcus," she finally managed, her voice a strained whisper. I don't know what you're talking about, Eleanor." I just looked at her, my expression neutral. No accusations, no anger. Just observation. I saw the fear in her eyes, the quick, shallow breaths. It was all there. The confirmation I needed. She wasn't just a bystander. She was a willing participant, terrified of being exposed. "It's okay, Mom," I said, my voice still calm. "I'm just saying. It's good to have a solid advisor. Someone you can trust." I let the words hang in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. She flinched, a barely perceptible tremor running through her. The game was on, and Carol Vance had just shown her hand, revealing a fear that spoke volumes. I had my proof, not just of Robert's dirty dealings, but of my mother's complicity, buried beneath layers of denial and desperation. The cookies sat untouched on the counter. The confirmation from Carol's reaction was like a cold splash of water. It wasn't enough to just know Robert was dirty, or that Marcus was his partner in crime. Seeing that flicker of pure terror in my mother's eyes, the way she physically recoiled from the mention of investments, that sealed it. She wasn't just a victim of circumstance. She was a player, scared of getting caught. And that, for some reason, made my resolve even harder. Now I needed the stage. The grand finale. and I knew exactly where it would be. The Gala of Gratitude. It was the perfect setup. A big, fancy charity event, the kind my parents loved to be seen at, dripping with faux benevolence and important people. It was where they felt most powerful, most themselves. And that's precisely where I was going to tear them all down. I'd been playing the role of the grateful, slightly overwhelmed lottery winner for weeks. Smiling, thanking everyone, letting them think I was still the same naive Eleanor. But beneath the surface, I was a storm brewing. The stolen business ledger was my secret weapon, tucked away safely. It held the dirt on Robert and Marcus, the proof of their shady dealings, their money laundering, their whole rotten operation. The week leading up to the gala was a blur of careful planning. I made sure to keep my family on edge, dropping little hints here and there, just enough to keep them guessing, to keep them looking at me, waiting for me to make a move. David was still calling, demanding money. His voice getting more aggressive with each call. Robert was more controlling than ever, trying to micromanage my every step, as if he still had any control. Carol was quieter, her eyes holding a perpetual anxiety, always watching me, always worried about what I might say or do. I met with Sarah at the Daily Grind one last time before the big event. The coffee shop was buzzing with its usual morning crowd, a comforting backdrop to the chaos in my life. I needed to make sure she was prepared, that she understood what was about to happen. "So the gala," Sarah said, stirring her latte, her brow furrowed with concern. "Are you sure about this, Sel? It's gonna be a lot." I met her gaze, a small, determined smile playing on my lips. "I'm more sure than I've ever been about anything, Sarah. This is it. This is where it all comes out." I fiddled with a loose thread on my sleeve, the nervous energy finally starting to bubble up. "I've got everything. The ledger, the proof. They think they've won, but they haven't seen anything yet." Sarah reached across the table, her hand covering mine. Her touch was grounding, a reminder that I wasn't entirely alone in this. "Just be careful, okay? They're not going to take this lying down." "I know," I said, squeezing her hand. "But I'm not the same person they think I am anymore. I've seen what they're capable of. And I'm ready." The plan was simple, really. I would attend the gala, play the part of the dutiful daughter, the lucky winner. I'd let them bask in the reflected glory, let them think they'd successfully manipulated me into their orbit. Then, at the perfect moment, when all eyes were on me, I would unleash the truth. The Gala of Gratitude would become the Gala of Reckoning. The Oak Creek Grand Ballroom would witness the downfall of the Vance family, and Marcus Bellwether would be right there to see it. It was time to cash in my chips, not with money, but with justice. The anticipation was a bitter, thrilling cocktail, and I was ready to drink it down. The night of the Gala of Gratitude was finally here. The Oak Creek Grand Ballroom was all glitz and glamour, exactly the kind of place my family lived for. Fake smiles, expensive suits, and a whole lot of people pretending to care about a cause they'd probably forget by morning. It was the perfect stage for my final act. I walked in, playing the part of the wide-eyed, slightly overwhelmed lottery winner. My parents were already there, of course, practically glowing under the chandeliers. Robert had his arm around Carol, a smug look on his face, like he'd personally orchestrated the entire evening, and in a way he had. They'd been prepping me for this, coaching me on what to say, who to thank, how to act. They wanted me to be their little golden goose, parading me around for everyone to see how their luck had turned. "Eleanor, darling, you look radiant," Carol chirped, her voice a little too loud, a little too bright. She smoothed down my dress, a beautiful expensive thing they'd insisted I wear. It felt like a costume, a gilded cage. Robert clapped me on the shoulder, his grip a little too firm. "Glad you made it, Ellie. Big night. Lots of important people here who want to congratulate you." His eyes scanned the room, already working the crowd, making sure everyone saw him with the lucky winner. David was there too, predictably. He'd cornered me by the champagne fountain, already whining about how he deserved a cut, how I was being selfish. I'd managed to brush him off, promising to talk later, a promise I had no intention of keeping. He was just another loose end, and soon he'd be tied up. Then there was Marcus Bellwether, looking as slick as ever. He sidled up, a practiced smile plastered on his face. "Eleanor, a pleasure to see you. You're truly a beacon of good fortune." He gave me a knowing look, a subtle nod that sent a chill down my spine. He knew I knew, but he was still playing his game too. They presented me with a gift, a beautiful diamond necklace. It sparkled under the lights, a dazzling display of wealth. My parents beamed, expecting tears, expecting effusive thanks. This was their moment, their payoff for all the years of, well, whatever it was they'd been doing. I took the necklace, my fingers brushing against the cold metal. Felt heavy, symbolic. I held it up, letting the light catch the stones. "Oh wow," I said, my voice trembling just enough to sound convincing. It's beautiful. Thank you." I turned to my parents, forcing a smile. "Thank you both so much. This is more than I ever imagined." Inside, though, my heart was a cold, hard stone. This necklace, this whole charade, it was all just a distraction. While they were focused on the sparkle, on the performance, I was getting ready for the real show. Tucked away, safe and sound, was the encrypted USB drive. Held everything. The business ledger, the coded messages, the proof of every dirty deal, every lie, every betrayal. I mingled, I smiled, I made small talk. I let them bask in the illusion. Robert was already bragging to some important-looking guy about how he'd guided me, how he was managing my winnings. Carol was showing off the necklace to anyone who would look. David was lurking in the background, looking resentful. Marcus Bellwether was schmoozing with potential investors, no doubt already talking about how he was going to help them make a fortune off of me. They thought they had me. They thought I was still the same naive Eleanor, happy to play along. They had no idea that the quiet girl they'd underestimated was about to unleash hell. I checked my watch discreetly. Almost time. The air in the ballroom felt thick with anticipation, but it wasn't for the charity. It was for what was coming. My moment. My revenge. The real gala of gratitude was about to begin. The moment felt like it was happening in slow motion. The hum of conversation in the Oak Creek Grand Ballroom faded, replaced by a deafening silence as all eyes turned towards me. Robert, Carol, David, even Marcus, they were all looking, a mixture of smug satisfaction and expectant smiles on their faces. They thought I was about to thank them, to gush about the diamond necklace, to play the part they'd so carefully crafted. But I wasn't Eleanor Vance, the naive lottery winner, anymore. Not tonight. With a deep breath, I walked towards the small stage area, where a microphone stood waiting. My parents exchanged a confused glance, then Robert gave me a reassuring nod as if to say, "Go on, give him your best show, kid." I reached the podium, my hands steady. The encrypted USB drive felt like a small, powerful secret in my clutch. I glanced at Sarah, who was watching from the back, her expression a mix of fear and pride. She knew. "Good evening, everyone," I began, my voice clear and surprisingly calm. The fake smiles continued, but a few people in the front rows started to look a little uneasy. "Thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate gratitude." I let the word hang in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. Robert leaned forward, whispering something to Carol, a self-satisfied smirk playing on his lips. He probably thought I was about to thank him for his guidance. "You know," I continued, my gaze sweeping across the room, landing on each of them in turn, "winning the lottery is supposed to be a blessing. Chance to change your life for the better." I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. But sometimes that blessing can reveal the true nature of the people around you. A ripple of murmurs went through the crowd. Robert's smirk faltered. Carol's smile tightened. David, who had been hovering near the bar, straightened up, a flicker of unease crossing his face. Marcus Bellwether, ever the professional, remained impassive, but his eyes narrowed, a subtle shift in his posture betraying his awareness. "My family," I said, my voice hardening just a touch, "has always been very supportive, especially my father, Robert, and his business associate, Marcus Bellwether. I gestured towards them, and the spotlight, which had been dimmed, suddenly flared, bathing them in harsh light. They looked startled, caught off guard. "They've been instrumental in helping me manage my winnings," I said, a small, cold smile touching my lips. "And tonight I want to show you all just how helpful they've been." I turned to the technician I'd prearranged with, giving him a subtle nod. The main projector screen behind me flickered to life. The first image was a clear shot of the stolen business ledger. The room fell silent, a collective intake of breath. "This," I announced, my voice resonating with a power I hadn't known I possessed, "is a record of illegal transactions, money laundering and fraud, all orchestrated by my father, Robert Vance, and his trusted partner, Marcus Bellwether." Gasps erupted. Robert stood up, his face a mask of disbelief and rage. "Eleanor, what the hell do you think you're doing?" he boomed, his voice echoing through the ballroom. "I'm telling the truth, Dad," I said, my eyes locked on his. "The truth you and Marcus have been hiding." The screen changed, displaying a series of emails, then coded messages, then bank statements, all meticulously gathered, all damning. I laid out their scheme, their plan to siphon my winnings, their years of shady dealings. I spoke of their greed, their betrayal, their complete disregard for anyone but themselves. Carol started to cry, not tears of remorse, but of pure, unadulterated panic. David looked like he was about to bolt. Marcus, however, remained seated, his face unreadable, a predator cornered but not yet defeated. "And as for my brother David," I added, my voice laced with a chilling finality, "your constant demands and threats have also been noted. Your entitlement won't protect you either." The projector now showed a damning bank transfer, dated just last week, from Bellwether Financial Services to an offshore account. Marcus Bellwether's carefully constructed facade finally cracked. His jaw tightened, his eyes burning with a cold fury. The gala of gratitude had just become the gala of reckoning. And my family's greed had finally met its match. The silence that followed my words was deafening. It wasn't just a hush, it was a vacuum, sucking all the air out of the Oak Creek Grand Ballroom. People dressed to the nines were frozen, their champagne flutes halfway to their lips, their carefully practiced smiles replaced by slack-jawed shock. My family, they were statues of horror. Robert's face was a shade of purple I'd never seen before, his mouth working like a fish out of water. Carol was openly sobbing now, her mascara running in dark streaks down her face, a stark contrast to the perfect image she always tried to project. David looked like he'd seen a ghost, or worse, like he was about to throw up right there on the plush carpet. Marcus Bellwether, bless his slick, conniving heart, was the only one who even tried to maintain some semblance of control. He stood up slowly, his eyes never leaving mine, a dangerous glint in them. "Eleanor," he began, his voice dangerously low, "this is a misunderstanding. Very serious one." But I wasn't listening. I was watching the first few guests, the ones closest to the stage, pull out their phones. The whispers started, then grew into a roar. Security guards, who had been milling around looking bored, suddenly looked very alert, but they didn't move towards me. They were looking at Robert, then at Marcus. They knew who was in charge, and clearly, the people in charge had just been publicly dismantled. I saw Sarah in the back, giving me a small, almost imperceptible nod. It was a look that said, "You did it." And in that moment, a strange calm washed over me. It wasn't happiness, not exactly. It was more like the quiet satisfaction of a job meticulously completed. The visceral drama I had orchestrated was playing out exactly as I'd planned. The next few hours were a blur of flashing lights, urgent questions from reporters who seemed to materialize out of nowhere, and the arrival of actual police officers. Robert was being escorted out, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated fury, shouting threats that were lost in the general chaos. Marcus Bellwether was being questioned by two stern-faced detectives, his usual smooth demeanor replaced by a rigid, defensive posture. He kept glancing my way, his eyes promising retribution, but I knew his game was over. The evidence I'd presented, the stolen business ledger and the financial records, were too concrete. Carol and David were a mess. Carol was being led away, still crying, clinging to David, who looked utterly lost. They were no longer the untouchable Van Cess. They were just people caught red-handed. The shame was palpable, a thick cloud hanging over them. I watched them go, a hollow ache in my chest. This was the price of their greed. And now, the price of my revenge. By the time the police finished their initial sweep, the ballroom was mostly empty, the glittering facade of the gala of gratitude shattered. The air still hummed with the shock waves of what had happened. I was left standing there, the diamond necklace still around my neck, a stark reminder of the life I was leaving behind and the path I was forging. It felt heavy, a symbol of everything I had endured and everything I had fought for. The police had taken the USB drive and the business ledger as evidence. They'd assured me they'd be in touch, that charges would be filed. I walked out of the ballroom, not into the waiting arms of my family, but into the cool night air, Sarah right beside me. The silence outside was different from the silence inside. It was peaceful. The immediate fallout had been brutal, a public dissection of my family's deepest flaws. But as I took a deep breath, I felt a sense of release. The visceral drama was over. Now, it was time to deal with the aftermath, the cold, hard reality of legal battles and severed ties. But for the first time in a long time, the future, however uncertain, felt like mine. The night air outside the Oak Creek Grand Ballroom was sharp, a welcome contrast to the suffocating opulence I'd just escaped. Sarah was beside me, a silent, steady presence. The flashing lights of news vans and police cruisers painted the dark street in strobing blues and reds. It was over. The show was done. Walking away from that place, leaving behind the wreckage of my family's carefully constructed lies, felt surreal. For months, I'd been living in a fog of disbelief, then anger, then a cold, hard resolve. I'd plotted, researched, gathered evidence like a squirrel hoarding nuts for a brutal winter. And tonight I'd unleashed it all. The immediate aftermath was a chaotic blur. Reporters swarmed, shouting questions. The police, bless them, were efficient. Robert was hauled off, his face a thundercloud of pure rage. Marcus Bellwether, the smooth operator, looked genuinely rattled as they led him away, his slick suit suddenly seeming cheap. Carol and David were just broken. Carol, a sobbing mess, clinging to a stunned David. They were no longer the Van Cess, the untouchables. They were just people caught with their hands in the cookie jar, and the whole world was watching. Now, standing here, the only sound was the distant hum of traffic and the crackle of police radios. The diamond necklace felt heavy around my neck, a gaudy reminder of the life I was shedding. It wasn't just a symbol of my winnings anymore. It was a symbol of my transformation. The naive Eleanor Vance, the girl who thought a lottery ticket was just a ticket to a good life, was gone, replaced by someone harder. Someone who knew the dark underbelly of the people she called family. A strange sense of calm settled over me. It wasn't happiness, not the giddy joy you'd expect from winning the lottery. It was deeper, colder. It was the satisfaction of a plan executed perfectly, of justice, albeit a twisted, self-served version, finally delivered. Seeing the shock on their faces, the utter disbelief as the truth spilled out. That was the payoff. The years of being underestimated, of being treated like a child, of seeing their greed fester unchecked. It all culminated in that moment. Sarah squeezed my arm. "You okay?" she whispered. I looked at her, my oldest friend, the one constant in the storm. "Yes, Sarah," I said, my voice rougher than I expected. "I think I am." The drive home was quiet. The Vance family home, that sprawling symbol of their fake success, felt like a place I'd never return to. It was tainted, a monument to betrayal. I didn't even know what would happen next. Lawyers, court dates, the messy business of untangling lives. But for the first time since that winning ticket landed in my lap, I felt truly free. Free from their expectations, their manipulations, their suffocating presence. The chilling satisfaction wasn't about the money. It was about reclaiming my own power. It was about proving that I wasn't just a pawn in their game. I was the player. The experience had stripped away a layer of innocence, leaving something tougher in its place. I'd learned that love could be a weapon, that family could be the deadliest enemy, and that sometimes the only way to survive was to fight back with everything you had, even if it meant getting your own hands dirty. Looking up at the stars, a million miles away from the drama I'd just created, I felt a profound shift. The future was a blank slate, terrifying and exhilarating all at once. I had faced down my demons, my own blood, and I had won. The cost was high, the path ahead uncertain, but the chilling, quiet victory was mine. And I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that Eleanor Vance would never be the same again. This was just the beginning. That's it. If you liked this video, share it with your friends and leave your like, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss more videos like this. Leave your comments saying what you thought of the video and what you would like to see in the next videos. Remembering that we have other videos in this style that you will like to watch, just enter our channel that I guarantee you will like. Until the next video.